In this lesson, we're continuing our discussion of performance, and specifically, we really want to focus on identifying what performance is due under both the common law and Article 2 of the Uniform Commercial Code. But before we jump into that, right, as a big picture refresher, where are we in the flow of our contracts analysis? Well, at this point, right, we're moving past formation into performance. So we're dealing with the issue as to whether or not we have a breach of contract. So if you're looking at a contract law fact pattern, you get to the call of the question. The call of the question asks you whether or not there's a breach of contract. We all know what step one is very well at this point. Well, first question is, well, do we have a contract? Do we have a traditional enforceable contract? And we'll run through my cats do sneak to make that determination. We'll ask, is there mutual assent, consideration? Are there any defenses that could invalidate the contract? Is a statute of frauds at issue, right? And once we determine though, or if we determine after our formation analysis that we do have formation of a traditional enforceable contract, and we're trying to solve the issue or come to a conclusion as to whether or not there was a breach of contract, then the next question is going to be whether both sides performed their legal duties under the contract, right? Because we know once formation happens, once we have formation of a traditional enforceable contract, that's going to impose duties on both sides to the contract. And if either side fails to perform their duties under the contract and they don't have an excuse for non-performance, then that's going to result in a breach of contract, right? So in the big picture flow, after we've decided or determined on our contract's fact pattern that we have formation of a traditional enforceable contract, we want to know whether there's a breach of contract. Our next question is going to be, well, do we have performance, right? And we're going to start in our mnemonic here with Sarah plays with cats every afternoon, right? We're going to start with this S, which stands for substantial performance versus perfect tender, right? And it's this idea that, okay, well, we know that we have legal duties imposed on both sides of the contract, right? Both parties have legal duties that they have to perform. But what does performance actually mean? How do we define that, right? And that's what this S in our mnemonic stands for, substantial performance versus perfect tender, because we're going to find, when we're trying to identify what performance is due, or we're trying to define performance, the rules are going to change a little bit, whether we're dealing with a service or real estate contract under the common law, or the purchase or sale of a good under Article 2 of the Uniform Commercial Code. Under the common law, our starting point rule is substantial performance. Under the UCC, purchase or sale of goods, our starting rule is perfect tender, unless the contract provides otherwise. This is a big exception to remember. We'll start with the common law first, then we'll talk about perfect tender, right? And remember, the idea here is we're trying to identify what performance is due and whether any performance can be discharged, right? These are always our two big issues. So let's start with common law substantial performance, right? So under the common law, when we have formation of a traditional enforceable contract and legal duties are imposed on either party, on both parties, right? And we're trying to decide whether the parties have performed their duties under the contract. Under the common law, we're going to ask whether the parties substantially performed their duties under the contract, which also, the other way to think about this is, okay, any breach, right? So no matter how big or small, any breach of contract under the common law, any breach of a duty to perform is a breach of contract, right? So it is important to recognize that before we jump into substantial performance, right? So if we have a contract, and bear with me for a second, this will make sense in a second. If we have a contract for the purchase or sale of a home, let's make it easier. Let's say a construction project, right? Let's say that I'm going to commission a builder, or you're going to commission a builder, someone who's very wealthy, right, is going to commission a builder to build them this big mansion. Say it's a $10 million home, 20,000 square feet, right? Huge mansion home, right? So a home purchaser is going to has bought the land and is commissioning a builder to build them this huge house, right? So they draft a contract and the contract is full of terms, right? it's a 100-page document, very detailed, of exactly what the builder is to build, right? It lays out all the plans of the home, all the specifications, all the rooms and layouts, what everything's supposed to be, right? That's all in the contract. And let's say that the formation of this contract is legit, right? We have mutual assent, we have consideration, there's no defenses or the statute of frauds at issue, so we have formation of a traditional enforceable contract, and it lays out exactly what the builder is supposed to build. And let's say that in one of the terms, this buyer of this home, right, that's commissioning the builder to build the home, wants the special type of light bulb installed, right? It's some special type of light bulb that's really expensive and high quality. And let's say that 1,000 of these light bulbs are to be installed throughout the home in perfect working condition on move-in date. Well, if move-in date comes and that buyer goes into the home and the home is built perfectly from top to bottom, every aspect of the contract was performed perfectly by the builder, right? This builder has built a masterful home. But the buyer discovers that one light bulb out of those 1,000 specialty light bulbs that were installed doesn't work, is defective in some way. The builder somehow installed it incorrectly, right? And now the buyer wants to recover. He's going to the seller and he's saying, or the buyer's going to the builder and he's saying, hey, look, you did everything perfect, but you did this one light bulb wrong, so you're in breach of contract. The question is, can the buyer actually win on a breach of contract? Can that person who's purchasing the home, who commissioned this builder to build the home, recover damages for that one light bulb, right? And the answer is theoretically yes, right? In our purposes on a contract law exam, on the bar exam, or in law school, right? Yes, that is a breach, and a breach is a breach, no matter how small. Any non-performance of a term in a contract is going to result in some sort of recovery for the non-breaching party. But the real question, and what we're focused on here when we're thinking about what performance is due, is whether the person who's purchasing the home, the buyer, still has to pay the builder, right? And that's where we ask this question as to whether the breach was material. Because in a situation like this, right, when we're thinking about substantial performance under the common law, what we're really saying here is, okay, well, this builder failed to install one light bulb correctly. That's not a material breach, right? That's substantial performance. Everything else was built perfectly. So this builder substantially performed their duties under the contract. There's no material breach here. So what we're going to say is, okay, sure, the buyer may be entitled to some recovery for this defective light bulb, but the buyer still has to pay the $20 million, whatever it costs to build this massive home, right? We're not going to discharge the buyer's performance because the breach was not material. Right, so the buyer may be able to recover something for that light bulb, right? Breach is a breach, but the buyer is still going to have to pay the builder, right? The buyer can't say, hey, look, you failed to install this one light bulb properly, so I'm now out, right? My performance is discharged. I don't owe you anything, right? I'm not going to pay you for building me an otherwise perfect home because this one light bulb is wrong. My performance is discharged. I'm not going to pay you. If the buyer did that, right, then the buyer would be in breach, and that would be a material breach, right? Not paying anything would be material. So the question here is more so going to be, and you don't want to get too tripped up by that, right? But it is an important distinction to realize. Well, any non-performance of a term of the contract is a breach, and there will be recovery available for that, even though in real life you might run into some problems. But for our purposes in law school and the bar exam, even if it's a small breach, right, a non-material breach, there still may be some remedies available for that. But the real key, right, the effect that we're getting at is the non-breaching party will still have to perform if the breach was not material. If the other side substantially performs, you still have to perform, right? You don't get performance excused or non-performance excused. Your performance is not discharged if the other side substantially performs, right? So that's the main idea here. Now, on the flip side, right, if this buyer walked into the home and he flips on the lights and no lights in the home work, right, there's just no electricity, right, somehow the electrician screwed everything up, none of the appliances turn on, none of the lights work, the house is completely, no electricity. Well, at that point, right, that would probably result in a material breach. And at that point, That means if we have a material breach, the non-breaching party's performance is discharged. So in that case, the buyer now does not have to pay, right? That $20 million contract, you can say, hey, look, there's a material breach here. My performance, that we don't have substantial performance. This builder failed to substantially perform. We have a material breach. Therefore, my performance is discharged. And that would be true, right? So under the common law, we have substantial performance, and we're really asking, is this breach material? And to make this determination, right, it's going to be very fact specific as to whether a breach is material, right? And it's really going to be how, you got to look at the breach relative to the value, right, of the contract, right? If it's very small, it doesn't affect much in the contract. One light bulb is defective, probably not material, right? But if it's something really big that goes to the heart of the contract or the purpose of the contract or substantially impairs the value or benefit of the contract, right, then that's probably going to be a material breach, and the non-breaching party's performance is excused. Okay, so small distinction there, right? Just remember, even if it's a small breach, you're entitled to remedies, right? No matter what, if there's a small breach, the non-breaching party is entitled to remedies. The real question we're getting at is whether the non-breaching party's performance is discharged. And in order for the non-breaching party's performance to be discharged, the breaching party's breach has to be material. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. I mean, common law substantial performance is pretty straightforward, right? It's really just one question. Was the breach material? And that's going to be very fact specific. Okay, so when we get to the UCC, right, so purchase or sale of a good, what performance is due under Article 2 of the Uniform Commercial Code, right? We're going to see we have a lot more rules, right? The UCC lays out very specifically what performance is due and different rights and obligations in different situations. So the UCC lays out a lot for us to think about when we're thinking about what performance is due and whether any performance is discharged. And below this video, I'll put more specifics of the UCC. What I really want to do here is just give you the big picture so you can see how it all works. And we'll talk about some of the specifics here, but the main idea is just kind of see the flow, the timeline, kind of how it all works, and then I can put a little bit more detail below the video. But I think the important thing to recognize is just the big picture ideas, okay? So the first thing we want to recognize when we're thinking about what performance is due in a purchase or sale of a good, right? We're in Article 2 of the Uniform Commercial Code. We have formation of a traditional enforceable contract. Legal duties are imposed on both sides. We want to know if both sides have performed or if any performance is discharged. How do we do that, right? Well, the first place we have to start is that under the UCC, the seller is going to have a duty to deliver perfect tender, what we call perfect tender, unless the contract provides otherwise, right? So the starting point rule under the UCC is that the parties to the contract can basically establish any rules regarding performance that they want, so long as it's not unconscionable, illegal, or otherwise in violation of public policy, right? But for the most part, right, within reason, the parties are going to be able to contract any terms they want. So if the parties to a goods contract want to follow common law rules of performance, they can contract that in. They say, hey, you know what? Performance here is going to be governed by rules of common law, of substantial performance, right? We're going to focus on whether the breach is material. So even a small breach in delivery of these goods can still not invalidate the performance or invalidate the contract, right? So the parties to the contract under the UCC can contract in almost anything they want, right? Again, as long as it's not illegal, unconscionable, in violation of public policy, they can contract out all of these rules of perfect tender. So the starting point rule on a contract law fact pattern, if you're dealing with a purchase or sale of goods, is to really read the contract carefully, right? If the fact pattern gives you a lot of the terms of the contract, all of those terms control, right, over these perfect tender rules. These UCC rules come in where the contract is silent on these issues, right? And from my experience, most of the time on contracts fact patterns, that's what you're going to have, right? You're going to have very broad contracts, and the grader, the person evaluating you, is going to want to see your ability to apply perfect tender, right? So they're not, because, I mean, think about it. It'd be pretty easy if the contract just gives you what the rules are, right? So Typically what's going to happen here on a contract law fact pattern in law school and the bar exam is going to be a very broad contract that doesn't really describe any of the rules as to what constitutes performance, and then you know to apply perfect tender, right? But important to know, right, that perfect tender is your rule unless the contract provides otherwise. So what is perfect tender, right? Moving on, right? The seller is going to have a duty, and if we're dealing with a purchase or sale of a good, the seller has a duty to deliver perfectly conforming goods in accordance with the terms of the contract, unless either of these two exceptions apply. Right, the contract provides otherwise, which we just talked about, or the contract is an installment contract. Under the UCC, installment contracts are governed basically by their own set of rules. Thank you so much for watching this video preview of our Legal Education Accelerator Program, or LEAP for short. If you would like to see the conclusion of this video and gain full access to our entire 1L and 2L video library, integrated outlines, streamable audio versions, additional practice exams with explanations, and much more, we invite you to head over to our website and join the thousands of law students who have already enrolled. To get started with your no-risk free trial today, simply click the link in the description box below or visit www.studicata.com/leap.
Hi everyone, my name is Serena and I'm currently a law student at South Texas College of Law, Houston.
Hi everybody, my name is Shiva and I'm currently a law student at Southwestern.
Hi everyone, my name is Michelle and I am a first year student at South Texas College of Law, Houston. I used the Studicata study video series last semester to help me prepare mostly for contracts, and I actually made an A+ in contracts last semester, which I greatly dedicate to the Studicata videos.
By using Studicata to help me prepare for my final exam, I was able to score the highest grade out of my class on the final and even have my essay distributed as the model answer. Not to mention I had done quite poorly on the midterm and was struggling throughout the whole course of the semester, understanding the material and keeping up with lectures.
Because of the Studicata video lectures, I was able to go into my exams with a feeling of confidence. I didn't have to worry about what the rules of law were or how I was going to organize my answer to an essay question.
I would absolutely recommend the Studicata series and their online course materials to anyone. I think that they are not like professor lectures that you might find online or other outside study materials that you may encounter. I think that the Studicata videos really focus on not only ensuring that you understand the material that you're going to encounter on your final, but they also help you to understand kind of the best method for test taking, and they really break down how to approach each problem and the best ways to tackle certain methods on testing, and I think that's really important, and I think it's really special. I don't see that anywhere else in any of the other online resources that I've found. So I would certainly recommend Studicata to anyone who is studying in law school right now. Good luck on your studying and you're going to do great.
I would definitely recommend Studicata to anybody watching this video. Give it a chance. I'm positive that you will love it, that you will get a lot out of it, and that you will be happy that you gave it a chance. I definitely am. I know I will be using Studicata in the future.
And I cannot thank Studicata enough for getting me through my first semester of law school. I will definitely continue to watch the Studicata video lectures throughout my law school career, and I highly recommend that any future or current law student do the same.